Hello, my name is Donald Mason. Welcome to my channel. In this video, I will show you why our schools and colleges should be using the Lydian scale to teach music theory instead of the major scale that they now use. Way back in 1945, George Russell asked Miles Davis the question, "What is your musical aim?" And Miles Davis answered, "To learn all the changes." Russell was surprised because Miles played as if he knew all the changes already. So he started thinking about what Miles really meant. That was how he started his research. A few years later, Miles learned the theory and released the greatest jazz selling record of all times, Kind of Blue. That brings us to the question, why did Russell's theory attract so many great musicians? John Coltrane, Ornette Coleman, Eric Dolphy, Bill Evans, Art Farmer, Woody Shaw, and many other great musicians of that time. They all saw what we are still seeing today, that there is a problem with C major, and that F should be where C is on the piano, and that would give them greater freedom. To illustrate the point, I will use a metaphor I got from Barry Harris. Barry is another great genius, just like George Russell. He made his own contribution to music theory when he came up with his own theory, which he called the sixth diminished concept, and which works very well. In a metaphorical sense, Barry considers the chromatic scale to be God. God created Adam and Eve. Adam and Eve represent the two whole tone scales which exist. There are only two whole tone scales in Western music, C whole tone and C sharp whole tone. Since the interval of a fifth is the strongest, and if we build a scale based on consecutive fifths, we get what is known as a cycle of fifths. So, Adam and Eve gave birth to two children, Cain and Abel. That is C Lydian and F sharp Lydian. And when you put the two Lydians together, you get the cycle of fifths. So the cycle of fifths is not constructed by putting two major scales together, but by putting two Lydian scales together. And because it's not possible to do the same with the major scale, this automatically and scientifically puts the Lydian scale at a higher level than the major scale. The Lydian scale forms part of the matrix from which all music or all of Western music is supposed to come from. This is a scientific truth which cannot be debunked. On the cycle, if you join all the notes which make up the Lydian scale, starting from C, you get C, D, E, F sharp, G, A, B, C. If we do the same with C major, we have C, D, E, F, G, A, B, C. And that gives us this pattern. But there is a problem. The note F is out of the axis. That is why Miles Davis said F should be where C is on the piano. Because with your imagination, if you push F upwards to where C is, it will fit into the axis perfectly. It becomes a Lydian scale, perfectly balanced. Or you can leave everything as it is, but whenever you think of C, don't think about C major, think about C Lydian. Graphical representations are used in mathematics, biology, medicine, and other fields. In music, graphical representations help us to see and hear things which we wouldn't see and hear with our normal senses. For example, this graph gives us a lot of information about the difference between the major scale and the Lydian scale. It is telling us that we can make C major, but it will always yield its tonic authority to F Lydian. It is being pulled towards the left by the force of gravity of F Lydian. Just by listening to these two scales, it's very difficult to detect this problem. You can see that C major is biased. It wants to go horizontal. It is not stable. It is not resting in itself. It is not resolved. While C Lydian is stable and resting in itself. It is a unified field of gravity. If Einstein was alive, he would have understood the theory immediately. Einstein was an expert on gravity. When Einstein said that gravity affects light, that gravity causes light to bend, some scientists started laughing at him. And of course, Einstein knew that gravity affects sound, because that's just basic high school physics. If Einstein was alive today, maybe he would have said, you know what, I have observed that myself, that there's something wrong with the major scale. Let me tell you something which many people don't know about Einstein. He was a very serious musician. He played the violin extremely well and with great passion. Einstein once said, quote, "If I were not a physicist, I would probably be a musician. I often think in music. I live my daydreams in music. I see my life in terms of music. I cannot tell if I would have done any creative work of importance in music, but I do know that I get most joy in life out of my violin." Unquote. That is why I say Einstein would have understood Russell perfectly, because they are both on the same level, one on light and the other on sound. He said, "I cannot tell if I would have done any creative work of importance in music." My guess is that he would have come up with the Lydian theory. He might have given it another name, and maybe you might agree with me that it is more difficult to detect that gravity affects light, and yet Einstein discovered that. Anyway, to sum up, we can scientifically say that God, that is the chromatic scale, gave birth to Adam and Eve, the two whole tone scales, and Adam and Eve gave birth to two children, Cain and Abel, that is C Lydian and F sharp Lydian. And these two Lydians gave birth to all the chords, scales, and modes that we use in Western music. Knowledge is power, so this knowledge will set you free. Talking about freedom, in his book, Russell said, I quote, "The higher the law, the fewer number of subjective laws, hence the greater degree of freedom. Freedom is not the absence of law, but rather the prevalence of a higher objective law superseding the existence of a plethora of lower, more subjective ones." Unquote. Toru Takemitsu was one of the most important composers of the 20th century. He composed the music for 90 movies. He wrote 20 books. He won several awards. Takemitsu said he was greatly influenced by the Lydian chromatic concept when he read the book in 1961. So if a guy like Takemitsu was influenced by the concept, then there must be something very important in it. Let's learn from the humility of the giants. Let's sit on the shoulders of the giants so that we will be able to see far. So please have an open mind, practice hard, and enjoy your freedom. Learn how to follow tonal gravity. Thanks for watching, and please remember to subscribe. See you in the next video.